Can a trace in Imola hide Ferrari's real problems? Or is it that finally the SF25 has found its competitive soul? Today we are going to unravel the data that could change the story of this season for Hamilton and Leclerc. In the Saturday classification, both Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton were eliminated in Q2, a result that fell like a cold water bucket in Maranello. The two cars were unable to find adherence, consistency in balance and speed at a lap, which generated a tense environment in the garage. The SF25 seemed completely lost in a circuit that historically has been favorable for Ferrari. That early elimination questioned not only the competitiveness of the car, but also the address of technical development that the team had followed since the preseason. It was a very hard blow, particularly because this was the first European Grand Prix of the year, and the expectations were immense. But as sometimes happens in Formula One, Saturday data did not tell the whole story. On Sunday in the race, everything changed. What was witnessed in Imola was a technical and strategic transformation worthy of study. The SF25, the same car that had been unable to qualify among the top 10, began to show an exceptional race pace. From the sixth row, Hamilton and Leclerc were climbing positions with unexpected efficacy, supported by two completely different strategies that, however, were complementary. Charles Leclerc was the first to hit. On Tour 10, Ferrari executed a millimeterly calculated undercut. Stopping so early in a high-degradation route seemed risky, but the rhythm that Leclerc managed to impose in clean air was such that, when the stops of his direct rivals were completed, Monegasco was already fighting for the top 5. His rhythm was so aggressive that he forced equipment like Aston Martin and Alpine to readjust his stop plan. And although he had to deal with incidents such as controversial contact with Albon in Curve 2, Leclerc remained firm, even when he was asked to return a position to avoid sanctions. His response was direct, questioning the logic of not having had fresh tires available during the safety car, a situation that prevented him from defending his position in recent laps and that evidenced a failure of management of the team at critical moments. For his part, Hamilton took a more patient but equally effective way. He started with hard tires, an unusual choice in that middle part of the grille. Its objective: extend the first batch to maximize the effects of the virtual safety car, and later of the safety car reel that appeared after a Duhan accident. This strategy, combined with a clinically precise conduction and an impeccable reading of traffic, allowed it to climb to fourth place. Hamilton took advantage of each strategic window and every error of its rivals to move forward without making failures. When getting out of the car, his surprise was palpable. Not because he doubted his capacity, but because for the first time he got on the Ferrari, he felt that the car worked for him and not vice versa. It was a moment of initial symbiosis between pilot and machine, the type of spark that can trigger something big if technical evolution is maintained. The contrast between Saturday and Sunday was so abysmal that inside the paddock began to speak of a possible Mercedes 2022 case, an unintelligible car on a return, but with hidden capacity to compete in the race. This hypothesis becomes strength if it is considered that neither the wear nor thermal degradation, nor the rhythm in dirty air limited to the SF25 during the 63 laps of the Grand Prize. And while the final result was not a podium, the 20 points added in such an adverse context have been interpreted within the team as a mini-victory. Not because of the numerical, but because of the symbolic. In a weekend where everything seemed to be lost, the SF25 showed that it keeps potential, that there is something that can still be rescued. That technical hope is, right now, Ferrari's main emotional fuel. In the analysis of data after Imola's career, Ferrari found a turning point that could mark the immediate future of the SF25. His behavior in long batch contrasted radically with his performance in classification. When studying the telemetry records obtained throughout the weekend, Maranello engineers ran into a finding as disconcerting as revealing. In multiple sectors of training, the car of the previous year, the SF24, was faster than the SF25, even using more hard tires compounds. This, at a technical level, represents an alarming scenario. A completely new car, developed with a whole year of simulations, wind tunnel and a different aerodynamic philosophy, should not be overcome by its predecessor under any comparable circumstance. However, that was exactly what happened. The most radical change of SF25 compared to SF24 is its front suspension architecture. Ferrari decided to leave the traditional pushrod and adopt a pullrod configuration, inspired by aerodynamic efficiency that teams such as Red Bull and McLaren have shown with that system. This transition not only implies a change in the distribution of pesos and in the chassis response, but also directly affects the way the car transfers load into rapid and slow curves. It is a bet of all or nothing. The worrying thing is that, for now, this redesign has brought more problems than solutions. The pilots have reported an extremely nervous car in braking, with difficulty stabilizing in the curve entry phases, especially when a lot of fuel load is applied or in crosswind conditions. To this is added an unpredictable thermal degradation of rear tires. In classification, the SF25 suffers to keep the gums in the optimal operating window, which causes premature overheating, loss of traction in the second sector, and times by inconsistent return. This pattern was repeated in Imola and had already been anticipated in Australia, but it was there that it was more evidenced by the direct comparison with the SF24. In the pre-season tests, the old car showed a more solid and predictable balance, and that lit all alarms within the technical team led by Enrico Cardile. It was an unacceptable paradox. They had built a new, lighter, theoretically more efficient car, but that was less effective on track. However, career telemetry tells a different story. Under sustained pace conditions, with high fuel loads and more stable track temperatures, the SF25 showed unexpected efficiency. In Imola, the times of Hamilton and Leclerc in stint media were comparable, and even superior, to those of teams that had dominated in classification. The key, according to engineers, was the balance reached when the car settled on its suspensions after exhausting part of the fuel. At that point, the load transfer is stabilized, the rear axle gains traction, and the car begins to work in a range closer to the ideal planned by its design. This phenomenon could indicate that Ferrari has built a car that, unintentionally, is optimized for career instead of classification. And that explains, in part, the contrast observed in Imola. The question that arises is whether they can adjust the platform so that this consistency is also transferred to Saturdays, where the exit position remains crucial on clues difficult to advance. Another interesting fact extracted from sensors is the energy efficiency of the hybrid system. The SF25, despite aerodynamic problems, has shown an excellent use of the ERS in long tanda, allowing Hamilton to easily defend a position on the main line. This little technical triumph could be key to the following development phases, especially if they decide to sacrifice aerodynamic load in exchange for tip speed, as Red Bull has made in previous seasons. It has hidden virtues that only emerge under specific conditions. The challenge for Ferrari now is to ensure that these virtues are constantly manifested, and that weak points do not continue to condition total performance. The good news is that they already have the data. The bad one, that the margin of error to interpret them and correct the course is minimal. After what lived in Imola, Lewis Hamilton experienced what could be described as the first true moment of connection with the SF25. Up to that point, his adaptation to Ferrari's environment had been marked by uncertainty, constant adjustments, and a slower acclimatization period than he had anticipated. But in the race, with the appropriate strategy and a car that finally responded under conditions of high load and where Hamilton felt comfortable, even inspired, it was the first weekend where he could pilot without fighting the car in each curve. That feeling, for a pilot of his caliber, makes a radical difference. Because when Hamilton feels in control, his fluid style and career reading become mortal tools. During the race, his decision-making was surgical. From conserving gums at the beginning with the hard ones, to capitalize every neutralization of the career rhythm, it executed its strategy without errors, while others committed small failures that eventually were expensive. It was not a spectacular overtaking that defined its result, but an accumulation of intelligent choices. And that has immense value within the team because not only adds points, it also infuses confidence. Ferrari needs more than a competitive car. He needs leadership inside the track. And Hamilton, with his experience and capacity for analysis, begins to assume that role. In addition, his approach to adapt the car to his style has been meticulous. After years in Mercedes, where he had a tailored environment, Hamilton has had to change his way of piloting. He studied how Charles Leclerc managed rapid curves, especially the technique of raising the accelerator's foot and loading more minimum speed. He imitated that pattern in classification, and although he still does not master it completely, he managed to approach performance. This is significant because it reveals a change of mentality. It is willing to shape the needs of the car instead of forcing it to adapt to it. It is an evolution in its piloting that few champions are willing to perform. It is also key to understand the mood of the team. After the bad start in Australia and persistent doubts about the SF25, the result in Imola works as a moral injection. In particular, Vasseur and his technical team interpret Hamilton's performance as a validation of the car base. It does not mean that it is fully developed or free of errors, but there is a clear path towards improvement. The internal message is that, with precise aerodynamic adjustments and better strategic management, This Ferrari can compete with McLaren and Red Bull. And when the team has that conviction, each session is faced with another mentality. Immediately, Hamilton's focus will be to continue adapting the configuration of the car in his style. He has already requested specific changes in motor maps to improve the response in half a regime and has suggested small alterations in brake distribution, based on his experience in Imola. They are surgical adjustments, but that can make a difference in circuits such as Monaco and Spain, where car control in technical areas is decisive. In the long term, the objective is clear: consolidating Ferrari as a team capable of fighting for constant podiums, even if the championship still seems out of reach. Imola, then, was not just a race with valuable points. It was a message. From Hamilton to the team, from SF25 to its detractors, and Ferrari to the rest of the paddock. They are not defeated. And if they manage to align the talent of their pilots with the technical development that the data begins to reveal, they could be closer than many think. The reconstruction is not over, but at least they already found the first solid brick on which to build. Imola's result has aroused a tangible illusion within Ferrari's garage, but the great unknown now is whether that performance was an exception product of circumstantial conditions or an authentic signal of recovery. Leclerc and Hamilton's comeback not only helped clean the image of the team after an irregular seasonal start, but also raised a critical question. To what extent is the SF25 competitive and consisting of different scenarios? In a championship like the 2025, where regularity is as or more valuable than peak speed, this response changes everything. Ferrari faces a demanding calendar in the coming weeks, with circuits such as Monaco and the Circuit de Catalunya that offer very different evidence to the Imola layout. Monaco will reward traction and low-speed stability, while Barcelona will require aerodynamic efficiency and general balance. If the SF25 manages to stay competitive in both, it will be the best proof that the car can adapt and that what happened in Imola was not only an isolated success in strategy and career management. For that, however, they must solve their main weaknesses: the sensitivity of the car to the temperature changes and the unpredictable behavior of the rear train in classification. From Maranello, you already work urgently in new aerodynamic updates and adjustments in the front suspension. The simulations in the wind tunnel have revealed that part of the problem could be in the interaction between the new concept of pull rod and the flat redesigned background. If they manage to redirect the airflow to the diffuser with greater consistency, they could not only improve the stability in rapid curves, but also to increase the general load without compromising the speed in line. The technical key is there: to improve efficiency without losing the general balance of the car, especially in short batches, where Ferrari has not yet been able to extract its maximum potential. At the internal management level, Frédéric Vasseur faces a difficult but not impossible task. You must maintain the positive impulse without falling into premature triumph. Ferrari knows that he needs sustained results to validate his technical project. A good result in a single race is not enough. They need to create a trend. Therefore, every weekend will be a new validation, a new test of reliability, strategy, and pure performance. And although there are still many unknowns, there is something that now have direction. They no longer advance blind. Imola showed them where to continue. In summary, the illusion that Ferrari awakens after Imola is not an empty fantasy, but it is not yet a guarantee of success. The SF25 has shown that it can be competitive, but needs stability, constant development, and an execution without errors. And that precisely is the challenge ahead.